I wouldn't even use the
grandchildren,
word,
you've done
I mean,
something
in the
right.
context of the
Well,
meeting, don't use the word pucks. Just say, you
Not
know,
everyone should
components
be
or
a parent, and
samples,
not everyone should
whatever
be a
you want to,
grandfather.
yeah, just,
Grandparent.
because the problem is when you
lucky
use
enough, you're
pucks, then it
blessed
goes
and you get
back to
grandchildren.
2009 when they were described as
I got
pucks.
nine grandchildren,
That's-
and they're all boys.
Yeah, that's what.
We couldn't buy a girl.
One was by,
Well, yeah.
she's half.
Yeah.
But we accept
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But no, I think having grandchildren is the greatest thing in the world.
It's a thrill.
It is such a thrill. I agree.
Now our grandchildren are bigger than I am.
Yeah. Well, when you
They're all grown up now.
Summer you start having great grandchildren, you can start the whole spoiling cycle
Of course.
all over again. And your grandchildren didn't do anything to deserve it, but you're going to do it anyway.
I'm waiting for my great grandchildren now.
Yes, you do.
And you can start the spoiling cycle.
Yeah, go.
If our kids don't do anything else right, they give us grandchildren, then that's okay. We forgive all their other trespasses.
How many wireless microphones do we
When you
have?
send the logs up to the
Okay, do they have two? Because I'm thinking one.
Cutting to the
which authority to vote on the appointment of auditors has been given to appoint Collins Barrow Toronto LLP Chartered Professional Accountants. I will now ask someone to move and someone to second a resolution appointing Collins Barrow Toronto LLP Chartered Professional Accountants as auditors for the current year and authorizing the directors to fix their remuneration.
Mr. Chairman, I move the following resolution. Be it resolved that Collins Barrow Toronto LLP Chartered Professional Accountants are hereby appointed auditors of the company to hold office until the next annual meeting of shareholders at such remuneration as may be fixed by the directors, and the directors are hereby authorized to fix the remuneration.
I second the resolution.
All those in favor, please so signify by raising your hands. Contrary, if any. I declare that Collins Barrow Toronto LLP Chartered Professional Accountants have been duly appointed auditors of the company to hold office until the next annual meeting of the shareholders, and that the directors have been duly authorized to fix their remuneration. The next item of business is to consider, and if thought fit, pass an ordinary resolution of disinterested shareholders ratifying and approving an amended and restated option plan for the corporation, which converts the prior 10% rolling stock option plan of the company into a fixed option plan. The board of directors believe that the new fixed plan will provide the company with greater flexibility in compensating directors, employees, officers, and consultants, enabling the corporation to better align the interests of its directors and its officers with those of its shareholders, and will reduce the cash compensation the corporation would otherwise have to pay to service providers of the company. The board of directors therefore is recommending that the shareholders vote in favor of the resolution to approve the new fixed plan. To be effective, the resolution must be approved by at least a majority of the votes cast by shareholders other than insiders of the company and their associates on this matter. To the knowledge of the company, votes attaching to approximately 4,438,977 common shares, or 4.4% of the outstanding common shares, held by insiders of the company and their associates, will be excluded from voting on the resolution. A summary of the terms of the new fixed plan is contained in the Management Information Circular under the heading Special Matters to be voted on, approval of amended and restated stock option plan. The aggregate number of common shares reserved for issuance under the new fixed plan, and the number of common shares reserved for issuance under any other share compensation arrangement granted or made available by the company from time to time may not exceed 20,407,350, which amounted to 20% of the issued and outstanding common shares of the company at the time of implementation of the fixed plan by the board of directors. Are there any questions concerning this matter? I would ask someone to move and someone to second a resolution ratifying and approving the amended and restated stock option plan.
Mr. Chairman, I move the following resolution. Be it resolved that the resolution of the company set out on pages 23 and 24 of the Management Information Circular relating to the ratification and approval of the amended and restated stock option plan of the company be approved.
I second the resolution.
All those in favor, please so signify by raising your hand.
Can't vote.
Contrary, if any. I therefore declare the resolution carried. Does anyone have any further business they would like to consider during the formal part of this meeting? If there is no further business, may I have a motion to terminate the formal part of the meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the meeting be terminated.
I second the motion.
All those in favor of the motion, please so signify by raising your hands. Contrary, if any? I declare the meeting terminated. That concludes the formal part of the meeting. I would like to call up Ian Clifford to give a presentation of the company's activities over the last year, and to the extent that we can share plans for the future. Thank you very much.
Is my microphone on? It is. I can hear myself. Great. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. It's great to see such a great group of people from all over the world, in fact, making this trip to our first annual general meeting in Austin, Texas. It's very exciting for a number of reasons. As many of you know, I moved down to Austin about 6 months ago, and we've been welcomed here. We've been able to build a tremendous team of people down here, and I'll get into the details of all of that activity in my presentation. I did want to take a moment just to mention the sad passing last year of Carl Nelson, who was in fact Dick's founding colleague in this technology. And I met Carl first in 2003, and he was a remarkable individual, brilliant, honest, direct, with a great accent and a great sense of humor. And he is sadly missed, but well remembered through all the work that we're doing and continue to do. I'll just spend the next 10 minutes reading our disclaimer. You're all familiar with our mission, I believe, and that is to become the provider of leading-edge electrical energy storage and related capacitor technologies. We brought things forward greatly in the last 6 months. The next upcoming weeks and months are going to be very exciting on this front, and I'll elaborate as much as I can on that throughout the presentation. The biggest challenge, I would say, over the last year, in fact, was in a challenging risk capital market, was to successfully raise over $9 million, I should say, in operating capital for the company. This was a Herculean effort by the entire group. And many of our new investors and old investors are represented here and online. And I just want to take a moment really to thank you for your past and ongoing support of our activities. Obviously, we're a pre-revenue organization, so we rely entirely at this point on the support of our investors. So it's very important that you're here, that your voices are heard, and that the company is representing the activities that you invested in. And we want to make sure that everyone is extremely comfortable with their investments and understand our path going forward. Last September, we really did a hard reboot, if you will, of the facility in Cedar Park. We had been in what I'll call a holding pattern over a 6-month period as we were raising the capital to get going again. But we had a very successful restart. Dick had spent a lot of time during that dormant period ensuring that everything in the facility was in prime operating shape. So we really didn't lose any significant steps as we restarted. And we were very fortunate to bring back several of our key employees who, during that dormant period, were doing other things, but were happy and willing to come back to to continue working for the company. And that their availability made that restart possible. And I just want to, all of us and all of you have met the crew, they're all here, just to pass along our thanks for that incredibly hard work. And it was a big lift, and we got it done, and we were producing materials and components within probably 6 weeks of our startup. So that was quite remarkable on all fronts. Yeah. Also, during the past 6 months, we've spent a lot of time looking at augmenting, supplementing the team with the best people possible for the tasks that we have been engaged in over the last 6 months. To that end, many of you will have now met Dr. Paul, who joined us in January of this year. Abhi brings a wealth of and depth of knowledge in, I'll say, cutting-edge polymer technologies, and his involvement has invigorated the team. He's a great individual. He's a team player. He's coming up with new and innovative ideas every day, and really pushing the boundaries of our remarkable CMBT materials. So he's been a great addition to the team. Brian Kelly, who many of you know, joined us about four or 5 months ago now. It seems longer. Yeah, but Brian's been with us for the last key period. And Brian, of course, through his work at NASA and the discipline that he has exhibited through his long career, has brought a very welcome discipline to our activities in Cedar Park. And I've been very, very pleased with the dynamic that Brian has added to the team, and I think we're all very, very happy to have Brian with us as well. So just a hand for those two additions. One very important thing that we undertook in September as we started things back up was to ensure that we had good, very, very secure recovery in the event of any catastrophic issues amongst the team or otherwise. And we wanted to make sure that we were training everybody as best as we could cross-functionally, so that there was a lot of redundancy in the operations within the facility. Dick has been incredibly helpful to make sure that everybody is well trained in multi-disciplines, and that, God forbid, anything happened to any of us, that we're in a position to pick up and continue the next day, to make sure that we can carry out our mandate and our objectives for all shareholders. So that's been a very important initiative, and we're in very good. I can report that we're in extremely good shape today to cope with any eventuality, which is a good feeling, I think, for all of us. Another thing that we did, because we've implemented our advanced polymer project and are looking at a number of different ways of increasing energy density in our materials, it's put a strain, if you will, on our CMBT production. And we have looked at a number of different ways of removing any pinch points or roadblocks in the process. And the team has all brought their ideas forward, a number of which have been implemented, and I can report today that we have the best throughput in terms of CMBT production that we've ever had in the facility, and have enough reserve and enough material in process to meet all of the different innovation work that we're doing on a daily basis. So that again was another concern coming into it, and the restart, just ensuring that we didn't again miss any opportunity because of lack of material. So, and I'll also report that a lot of the materials in the facility have been there for a number of years, because Dick has used the same constituents for a long period. The quality of those materials has not degraded at all. We test, of course, every aspect of every run before we process our CMBT, and we are getting near absolute purity on our mixes. So just another testament to the incredible design of the facility, the durability of it, and the scalability also of the way that we produce our powders. The next 6 months, you'll all be interested, we will be further strengthening our balance sheet. So through equity and warrant-based transactions, also looking to licensing fees from initial licensee partners. There are a number of different initiatives that we have underway to make sure that we've got operational capital to keep us strong 12, 18 months out. I think for everybody's comfort in the room and online, it's important that the company have a solid financial base and that we've got that longevity in the bank so that we can, of course, continue to meet all of our advanced program needs. So that is an ongoing, a company like ours, pre-revenue, raising money, finding ways of bringing money in are of course, a full-time job. And we work vigorously at that all the time to ensure the safety of the organization in that regard. You'll all be aware that we have 2 distinct paths, and I'll get into those a bit more in detail further on in the presentation, but we have what we'll call our classic high voltage capacitor business that addresses some very well-defined markets where we believe we have extremely competitive high voltage technology. And then the other aspect of our work, which is in some ways it's all a continuum of the base technology, is our high voltage, high energy density breakthroughs. And we are focused on both. Because of timing issues, you never know where you're going to hit success first. But based on our last couple of phases of testing, we're very confident in the high voltage capacitor world that we have product that is competitive in a number of very key areas. And a lot of that has already been discussed and disclosed in our past phases of testing and associated white papers. And we will continue to, as those relationships develop and we are able to talk more about the details of those relationships, we'll of course be disclosing those on an ongoing basis. Our negotiations with potential licensing partners continue on a number of different fronts. They're heavily non-disclosed discussions, as all of you can imagine. They have disclosure points. We haven't reached disclosure points on those discussions yet. As soon as we do, we will disclose, as you're all anxious to hear. But they are complex discussions. They are involved. They are multi-layered. They are intense. But we will talk about those in proper disclosure terms when we can. But just to let you know that those are ongoing. We've been talking about those for a number of months now. Our consultant, Dennis Ogby, is of course extremely active in those discussions. And I can report that we're making positive progress, but I won't talk more about any details at this point.
Can you give any hints?
Nope. We can pick that up in the Q&A. The question, just the general question from the floor, was what is a disclosure point? They're all tied to the evaluation of the technology, and when we get to a certain level of evaluation, there's a disclosure point. So it's up the food chain, if you will, in terms of discussion. The Advanced Polymer Program, which we announced late last year, revolves around a couple of individuals and organizations. I mentioned Dr. Paul's joining the team in January. And as mentioned, we've been making some really interesting steps forward in that regard, and some of which you've seen reflected in the phase 5 testing that came out a couple of weeks ago. Others that we will be disclosing, of course, as we progress. But the work that Abhi has been doing and the work that ASG has been assisting with as well are producing some very, very interesting results. Again, as we get to the point of a very, very clear path forward with any of those given material solutions, we will go for independent validation testing with MRA and Intertek on those. We've implemented, as you all know, a very, very strict protocol to ensure that every claim that is made is backed up by independent third-party validation by MRA and by Intertek. We want to be sure that our internal numbers match almost exactly to the numbers that we're getting from our independent testing from MRA and Intertek. And that has been the case for the last number of phases. Well, all with Intertek since our phase 1 testing started with them, and over the last couple of phases when MRA joined the test regime. Earlier in the month, we came out with our phase 5 results. We saw extreme time constants, ability for the technology to store energy over 20 times higher than the phase 4 results from, I guess that was November of 2016. These numbers become very important as we start looking at our ability to be competitive in a number of areas in the high voltage capacitor market, but also very interesting as we start looking at higher energy densities and how our techniques, some of our unique techniques, come to play in those solutions. Again, as the press release that came out yesterday, and I'll talk briefly about that, but it's very, very important that the work that we've been doing internally over the last number of months plays directly into the success of our technology as we increase energy density. And there's a direct correlation and a direct relationship between that. We also, in the phase 5, we announced that we were sort of halfway through a 1,000,000 cycle test. As you all would have noticed in our press release yesterday, that was completed at 1,000,000 cycles with no degradation to the technology. In fact, some of the featured aspects of the technology strengthened slightly with no noticeable heat dissipation in those 3,000 volt part rather. So this was our press release yesterday. This is our benchmark for our energy density work. Many of you have asked questions. There's a tremendous amount of interest in this. We plan over the coming weeks and months to be very transparent and communicative as this advances. I know most of you are here and have been involved in this story over the years with the promise of high energy density storage. And certainly when Dick and Carl were originally developing the technology, the focus was heavily on building a better battery. That's what we're doing. That's where we are today. We felt it was prudent to indicate to our shareholders that we have hit energy density numbers that are meaningful in relation to our ultimate goals. And as we said yesterday, we see a very clear path forward towards numbers that could be disruptive in any number of industries. In the press release, we picked lead acid as a technology, which is ubiquitous in so many different sectors. We don't have to get to a very high energy density to eclipse that $50 billion a year market with a solid state technology that outperforms it, would outperform it on every level. So a lot of excitement around that internally, a lot of multiple paths to this solution, just so everyone is aware. And again, I can assure you that our intention is to be very forthcoming as we make our incremental advances in that area, mainly because I know so many of you are deeply compelled and intrigued by that aspect. So we'll make sure that we have a very, very good disclosure path forward with that. The stock has done well in the last year. We did, as many of you know, and some of you participated in, we did a $5 million raise at the remarkable price of 15 cents a share with a 30-cent warrant. And all of those investors have done quite well in the past number of months, which is exciting for everybody who participated. We also have, many of you may have noted that we have about 3.7 million $1 warrants. They were repriced that expire at the end of June of this year. So we will be aggressively working towards disclosure that brings the stock into line with those. That would be a very important funding juncture for us. And as well, we are, of course, always considering and looking at various funding mechanisms to ensure that capital doesn't become a challenge for us in the now and into the future. And that's the end of my presentation. I wanted to keep this very short and sweet and get to questions. And I wanted to, again, thank everybody for coming. It's been great to see you all again. I think this is, for me at least, this is my 10th annual general meeting for the company, and I've never felt better about where we are today than at any point along the way. And we've got an amazing team. We've got some incredibly compelling technology, and I think in the coming days and weeks, you're going to see more and more of what we got and where we can go with it. So thank you very much all for coming. Okay. Jessica has a microphone, so if anyone has questions, and then we'll direct it to the appropriate folks. Dick is here, of course. Brian is here to answer some questions. Dr. Paul can answer. Abby, if you want to come up to the front, just in case we direct some questions to you. Yeah, why don't you just have a seat up front?
Does anyone have any questions? None?
This will be a first. If this group doesn't know, oh no, sit down, Francois.
Testing.
This is Paul Cummings. Just earlier you mentioned the disclosure event. Is that keyed by your discovery of a certain level, or by the tester who's looking at the technology to perhaps do a deal with us?
It has to do with their level of testing and where we're at in that continuum.
Any other questions?
You can ask a question, Francois. Don't be shy.
My understanding is that the intent right now is to try to develop licensing agreements in various verticals. How many verticals are we talking about?
Well, the ones that we've identified through our disclosure, at least, specify power factor correction and power conditioning and power supply type capacitance at high voltages. We've also indicated high voltage aluminum electrolytic replacements as well. So those are some of the verticals. It depends which partner, potential licensee you're talking to, because a number of them are segmented very clearly. Others have very, very broad applications. Others have interests that are outside of capacitors and very much into high energy density storage. So we're talking to a myriad of different opportunities.
Can you disclose how many firms you're talking to?
No, not at this point, no. But the discussions are active on a number of fronts.
Are there any aspects of the product you have now that are an issue in entering these negotiations?
Any aspects? Well, we're supplying them with full test kits that show the same results as our Phase 5 MRA Intertech disclosure. So that's the most detail I can go into, but it's described within that report.
Okay, thank you.
How many kits was that again you sent out?
Tricky audience.
François Deloge here. I just want to know if there are plans to go with higher stack in the near future, disclosure about higher stack with stacking effects, and if there are already tax bills in-house?
Can't, again, talk about what's built or not built because it's not disclosed. I'd say a very obvious answer to that question that doesn't breach any confidentiality is there is interest in what happens and in the insurance that as we go up in stack density that the effect remains consistent. We have not disclosed that. I mean, that was your question, right? Will we disclose it in the future? I can't say what we will disclose in the future or not disclose in the future. But again, it's a logical progression. It's a logical thing for us to look at and have validated, third-party validated.
We have one question from online. If 100 watts per hour per liter is believed to be possible, then how much higher than 100 watts per hour per liter does EEStor realistically think it can reach?
Well, isn't that the trillion-dollar question? Who sent that in? Yeah. Well, we can't disclose anything that we haven't disclosed. We did disclose yesterday that we were very comfortable with a path forward to 100 watt-hours per liter with the materials in their current configuration. That's as far as I'm going to go, quite frankly, because we're not here to overpromise and underdeliver. We want to make sure that we keep our targets realistic, and for the purposes of this audience, we want to make sure that we can show you on an ongoing basis that we are approaching those objectives and achieving them. Brian, in the back, excuse me. Wait for the mic so that folks online can hear.
Thank you.
Are you just going to go on and on with potential partners, or is there a fixed group that you're talking to? That I know you're working through Dennis on this. Is it a limited number, but it seems that the test results that are out right now that you could just go through and through and through with any number of companies, and is that a path to go down? Does that make sense? Is it limited, or it just seems endless, the amount of people you could continue to bring in until something is done? Well,
the potential list is endless, or not endless, but it's defined in terms of the major players in the industry. From our perspective, it's where will we get the best deal or deals, quite frankly, and that's what we're focusing on, companies where we believe we're going to get the best result for the company and for the shareholders.
Major companies, not just companies, but we're talking major companies.
So the question is, are we talking major companies or companies? We're talking name brand, recognizable organizations that have the depth to implement on a global scale. That's our interest.
Any other questions? Yes. Sorry, here, and then we'll come right back.
So you say there's multiple paths you're exploring to get to where you want to go. How much of it is that exploration versus a time-sensitive nature of trying to just achieve a certain point to be able to make deals and licensing?
No, it's a good question. So from a process perspective in our facility, Dick has designed what we've got is, it's really a production facility. It's not an R&D plant. It's not a laboratory. It's a place where we can work through materials and exploration of the performance of various materials incredibly quickly. So we know results within hours, or in worst cases, days. So the path can be, we can define paths very, very quickly. We can validate, we can eliminate, we can explore further very, very quickly. And that's why I was earlier commented on the importance of our CMBT throughput, is that we are looking at a lot of different things at once. There's a lot of brain power going in today to finding different ways of unlocking this intense power of the CMBT. And we believe we're on several paths now that are viable. And we'll see which plays out the first, right? That's the process, and we will test and certify and everything else based on that progress.
Follow-up question?
Ken?
Yes. Can you even address the question of why there is no heat given off
No.
of our product?
No,
No,
I
I
mean,
was just-
no, and quite interestingly, I mean, there's been feedback on that. Our test protocols will continue to change as the densities of the material increase and so on. We will be modifying our test protocols to look at different aspects in different ways. So don't think for a moment that that single 1 million cycle test is the only definitive test that we will be doing. There's a lot of things that we will continue to explore and continue to disclose relative to the technology.
Question here.
Yep.
Is there anything else given off other than heat, radio waves?
Well, you're asking, yeah, we haven't disclosed any of that, so it's a good question, but we can't discuss that now.
We've had great discussion and points so far. I guess I'm coming from a different perspective is, what's our competition in the advancing of technology that you've looked at to say, and there's been various companies we've heard, and they've had their approaches and their failures. Is there anybody on the horizon or out in left field or right field that is, you could say, is a potential competitor to this approach that you're taking in terms of your technology? Is there somebody else outside there that is also looking at different things? And how could you evaluate our position compared to theirs and changing of the dynamics of the whole energy storage business?
It's a really good question, and there's a couple of ways to approach the answer. I mean, we think of our competition as lithium-ion electrolytic storage of any description, where we intend to meet them in terms of densities and beat them in terms of all the practical application of our technology that differentiates us and improves us dramatically over any electrochemical solution. In terms of other solid state approaches, on our radar, there are no other companies doing storage or capacitance in the same way as we are with similar materials. That's not to say that there aren't programs that we're not aware of that people are working on, but the unique nature of our dielectric and the CMBT that Dick and Carl originally designed is unique, and we have not seen any materials in that vein that come close to the performance characteristics of the CMBT, and that's why the company exists. I mean, it's built around that.
Ian, have you gotten any feedback from Dennis Zogby on the latest test results? Has he made any comments?
I won't comment on Dennis's comments, if that makes sense. I talk to Dennis most days, yeah. He's a happy guy. I don't know. What can I say?
He's not sad with the results?
No. And how many test kits have we sent out? Sorry, I can't answer that either. Anyhow, go ahead.
Another question.
Yes.
Is Lockheed Martin still in the picture?
Lockheed Martin have an exclusive license for Homeland Security applications of the technology. So yes, they are still have that right to the technology. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Sort of a follow-up based on where we are is, why aren't they all beating a path to our door
Today?
Yeah.
I think we're still. I mean, I think we're still small. We're still playing below the radar. Our approach, as you can see from the release yesterday, is we want to sort of step things up incrementally. We feel that that's the best way to build strength in the company, to build strength in the stock. I think at certain levels we can be very, very direct as to who we choose to go to at that point. And some of which we're talking to, others of which I think we need to get to certain levels before we approach them with our solution. But I think there will very much be a tipping point, and whether it's a stampede or a very targeted approach, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, part of, in a shareholders meeting, part of the concern is whether we, feel that the company is protected from something that, something hostile that we can't predict. We have a shareholders' rights plan in place, as all of you know, which gives us time to react to anything that's perceived as hostile. And we have really, we have a lot of shareholders, but we also are, I will call it a tightly held stock. So from a control perspective, today at least, I feel we're in a good position to respond to any type of inquiry as you're suggesting. Ken.
Years ago, we used to have a new technical agreement between the two companies. Is that still in effect?
Well, the nature of the relationship between the companies changed back in 2014. So now we have, as you're probably all aware, there's two boards of directors. But the corporate board is fully represented on the EEStor Inc. board. And from a functional perspective, operationally, we operate as one company, essentially. There's public company aspects of Corp that are distinct of Inc. and are, play much more on the regulatory side of the equation. But really, operationally, most of the activity is happening here in Austin. And that's the other reason why I'm here, is that trying to do things remotely just was becoming too challenging, and it's much better to be here on a daily basis.
There were milestones mentioned in that technical agreement. I thought that obligated one to the other.
You're going pretty far back. Yeah, no, all of that's been replaced by an operational relationship between the entities. So yeah, no, there's no, you're asking, are there milestone-driven events? No, there are none, no. Francois?
Okay, 3 follow-up.
Did you say 3 follow-ups?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just bracing myself.
Is there some event that would trigger the folding of Inc. in Corp?
Is there a specific event? No.
Or set, or is it planned already?
But again, this is something that the boards are looking at, and we'll make a decision based on what's the optimal environment for that to happen.
Okay, second one, you've said you plan to be competitive with lithium ion, or that's the general goal, including pricing. We've seen pricing of $250 per kilowatt hour for a pack. Recently from Tesla. Do you plan to be competitive pricing-wise?
We plan to be competitive, and we wouldn't be competitive if we weren't competitive on price. So yeah, very much our focus is to ensure that we're getting the lowest cost solution that we can manufacture, and then also taking into account all the benefit that exists within a solid state environment as opposed to electrolytic. And yeah, sorry, I answered the question. Yeah.
And finally, back to technical, we've read you write about the stacking effect on the time constant being pretty clearly set. You're pretty convinced that it will scale forward, but we have not heard about the capacitive part that has been exposed in phase 4 tests.
Right.
Do you still plan that capacitive part to scale
yes, we
better
do.
than classical law of capacitor?
Well, we do, and the report from yesterday also talked about capacitive improvement as well. Again, going forward, we will be disclosing that progress as we have it independently certified. So yes. Expect those very clear disclosure answers in the coming weeks.
Besides Lockheed Martin, are there other companies, like I remember one was, I think it was EV Light, that had a license for 2-wheeled applications that are still in effect.
Light
since the
EVs.
company-
Light EV.
Light EV,
yes,
yes.
correct. Yeah, no, they have a 2- and 3-wheel license agreement with the company that is still in effect. Yes.
And so besides those two, are there any others, or are those the only two remaining that have
No,
license?
we would disclose if there were any other material agreements. Yeah.
Okay,
just
thank
those
you.
two. Oh, wait. Yes, that's correct. Is that correct? I mean, there was a power symmetry agreement. It's not formal. Yeah. So those are the two formal agreements. Yeah.
Great.
Is that it?
Seems to be.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for making the journey, and it should be a very exciting year for the company, and we look forward to that. Thanks again.
We would like to invite you all to stay for lunch. The bar will be open. Bar's back here, and we will also be having lunch straight through there. You have access to almost the entire facilities right now as they're closed, so please do feel free to explore, and thank you for